Yo, this is Tyler Smith with Intrinsicus. Guy to be back for a second day in a row. Well, second day in a row recording. This may get uploaded after midnight. It is currently 10:47 on the East Coast. Again, I apologize to my one subscriber and anyone else who listens who hasn't subscribed yet. I'm not good at this. I'm really not. I'm not good at being consistent. Again, I kind of just see things and I go like, hey, I want to talk about that. I need to do better and I can do better. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on today in today's world that makes this an interesting place to have, these types of conversations and things like that. Sorry for the background noise. Okay, sorry about that. Today's gonna be an interesting one. It's gonna be really, really interesting. Kind of self-explanatory, but I think we need to start cleaning the air on words. I think the left. Again, I want to be very clear. There's a clear difference between liberals, central leftists, people who say, "Hey, we should probably have a different type of tax system." Maybe the government has more programs that we acknowledge to and that we pay for. There's a difference of that, right? People who say, I acknowledge I'm going to pay more. I acknowledge that I want taxes to be higher, but this is what I want in return, versus people who say, I want all these things. And then when someone goes, hey, how do you pay for it? They go, I don't know. The government pays for it. They go, yeah, but who pays the government? The taxpayer, right? Okay, so today's topic is capitalism versus communism. Again, really self-explanatory. Like, we shouldn't be in this country debating the differences between communism, socialism, and capitalism. These words get conflated. These words get turned into colloquials. These words get turned into something that they turn into slang. And because we turn them into slang and colloquials, and no one is brave enough or smart enough or not lazy enough to kind of put their foot down and say, hey, let's clear up this language. Like, as we kind of go through these debates, we need to set forth terms and conditions for debates. I think no one's doing that, right? No one is saying, hey, let's all make sure we're using the same type of language, right? That's used for various political reasons, ideological reasons, but no one's agreeing to terms. So my listener, my one subscriber, and anyone else who listens who hasn't shared, comment, or subscribed yet, make sure you do that. Anyone who hasn't done that yet, we kind of need to start. Sorry, I gotta adjust the microphone. You might hear some background noise. We really need to start. As we talk to people, we need to make sure our language is clear, very, very clear. And I think that once we have clear language, we realize that a lot of people on the right and left are upset at the same thing or angry at the same thing. It's just the language is so muddy that we get nowhere. Okay, I just rambled for a whole bunch. Let me go ahead and put this in different ways. Sorry about that, guys. It might be some jogginess in the audio. I had to adjust my microphone was falling off the table. But again, back to what I was saying. If we start to define language better, we'll realize that we are all upset at the same things. We just don't know it yet. So let's kind of go into capitalism. Capitalism, again, being the private ownership of goods and services. That is all capitalism is. That's all it is. Anyone who says it's a debt-based system, is a Keynesian debt-based system, it's greed, it's selfish. No. Capitalism is just a way of governance that allows for the private ownership of goods and services. I'm going to say it again. The private ownership of goods and services. If anyone says otherwise, they're being intellectually dishonest and they're lying to you. Or they're just misguided. Why does this matter? Why does this matter? The understanding of the private ownership of goods and services. If you make hats, if you make mittens, if you make coffee, if you make a certain type of tea, if you make car parts, if you make makeup, if you make shoes, the fact that you can go out and say, I'm going to make an LLC, an S corp, a C corp. I'm going to make a business. I'm not going to mix my personal money with my business money. I'm going to pay business taxes and sales tax based on on the materials I need. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to make X amount of shoes, right? So if you want to be one of those, I don't want to say boutiques, but if you want to be one of those businesses that say, hey, I'm only going to make 100 shoes a year, and because I'm only making 100 shoes a year, or let's say, okay, that's a bad example because shoes have so many sizes. Watches, right? So let's say you're a watchmaker. Again, sorry guys about the shifting topics. Again, shoes, you have to worry about so many sizes. But let's say you're a watchmaker and you're gonna make 100 watches a year. But because you're only making 100 watches a year and each of them are done by hand, each one's gonna cost $5,000, right? And I think if you do math, 5,000. I can't do math. I only got to add to it. I had 2 zeros to that. We're looking at say 5,000 times 100. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible at math right now. $500,000, right? So you're going to bring in $500,000 of profit for the revenue for the year, minus any expenses, taxes, material costs, things like that, right? Shipping costs. Or you can say, I'm going to make 500,000 watches all at $100 a piece, right? It doesn't matter, right? Or I'm going to make 5,000 watches at $100 a piece, right? You have the say so to do that. And socialism, right? Let me go ahead and pull up this definition. Oh, sorry guys. If I'm in a hotel, if you hear background noise, there's kids in the pool living their best life. So again, I apologize for the background noise. Yesterday it was a thunderstorm. Now there's kids just living their best life at 10:55 at night when they need to be in bed. Okay, so socialism encompasses a broader spectrum of political beliefs, but shares some of them with communism, which we'll get to in a minute. They share the communism emphasis on a fair distribution of wealth among citizens, as well as public ownership of the means of production through not necessarily all of them. In this sense, socialist programs and policies can exist alongside capitalism in society, which I'll get to in a minute, which is less likely in a true communism state. Socialists may or may not see a communist system as their end goal, right? So before we get to alt-right communism, we got to talk about socialism. Socialism is just, again, it is the state ownership or the public ownership of the means of production. And I'm going to get into some laws here soon, which is going to really rack your brains when we start talking about like how much capitalism is actually inside America. It's going to make you think a little bit. But again, what we're saying is the public ownership, right? It means that the state, the public, which is the state essentially, owns these things. Granted, there are citizens, right? And the citizens make up the governance. Private citizens will then be elected or appointed to the governance, and then they'll be appointed or elected to the government, and then the government will anoint their governance and say, we're going to socialize healthcare, healthcare is the easiest one. Healthcare, retirement, name it, right? So let's kind of think about this for a second. We have socialism in America already. One, you have corporate socialism, where these big banks get bailed out all the time. Well, not big banks, big businesses, and every economic hardship, they get bailed out. So that's socialism, right? And a lot of people get mad at that. And we go like, why are these companies getting bailed out? Hold on, wait a minute. They're public companies. A lot of these companies are publicly traded on the stock market. and they're titled public. They are no longer private companies. And so that's something that you need to understand, moving forward. Put that little piece of information in your back pocket. But again, another area again is going to be socialized medicine, where we say, hey, we're going to put forth all this money, and the state can divvy out everything, right? And the state can divvy out, the costs and the maintenance and everything for the emergency room systems, the cancer treatments, all the way down to your pediatric and geriatric care, right? So that's socialism. Again, in a bucket is just the state ownership of the means of production. It doesn't have to be all of them. It can be through some of them, right? And sometimes it's democratically chosen, right? People vote to say, hey, we give up the right to maintain this ourselves, and we give it to the government, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. There's a lot of examples we can go through. Then we have communism, right? And communism, at its most basic form, is a philosophy based on the equitable distribution of wealth among a nation's citizens and the common owners of all property. In particular, it calls for the control of the means of production, such as manufacturing and agriculture, by the working class or proletariat. Its ultimate goal was achieving a classless society, at which point the state or the government would wither away. Contemporary communism is an offshoot of socialism and is sometimes called revolutionary socialism, for advocating the takeover of governmental powers by the working class through revolution rather than incremental reform. So we kind of just went through the definitions, right? So why does this matter? This matters for a very, very, very important reason, because a lot of our pains, or a lot of our angers, a lot of our strifes, we agree on, right? I see it on the left, on the right, in the center, the north, the south, the up, the down, blah, 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 right? I see everyone kind of complain about the same thing, right? They complain about not having enough money. They complain about a crappy system. They complain that the system isn't working. Okay, it's like that. And now each one feels the system isn't working at their own view. At the end of the day, they're still complaining that the system isn't working. Now, also each side will say, this part of the system works for me, and this part of the system works for me, and we want the other person to kind of adopt that. And that's where we start to go wrong quickly. But outside that is, and capitalism is just the private ownership of goods and services. It just allows you to say, I want to do this. If I only want to make X amount of watches, I'm only going to make X amount of watches. If I'm going to charge only X amount of watches, if I only want to charge X amount per watch, I'm going to charge X amount per watch. And you can't tell me otherwise, right? Now, in a country, we have slowly started moving towards, I don't want to say socialism. I don't want to say socialism at all. But we've been moving to a more regulated free market. We always say, America's such a free market. Is it? It's not, right? You have the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. You can't be selling crappy pig, crappy pork and beef on the market. If you're a farmer and you're selling crap meat and that's going to get people sick, you're going to have some people in some suits and some ties knocking on your farm door. Right, you can't just be out here selling fentanyl on the streets. You can't do that. You cannot sell fentanyl on the streets. You're gonna have some people, not in suits and ties, but with bulletproof vest on, helmets, and an M4 or a H&K or MP5 knocking down your door. There won't be no knocking on the door. They're knocking down the door. In a free market, you just can't. What's another thing? Here we go. We put regulations on the type of things you can put, like the type of chemicals you can put on, like on furniture. Like believe it or not, like we don't have lead. We don't have a lot of lead around here, right? We don't have a lot of these toxic metals that can that can chip off and get in the air. We don't put lead in paint anymore, right? So in a complete free market society where there's no overarching government, we will probably still have lead in the walls. We would have people selling bad meat, doing these things. And now libertarians say, well, the free market will price them out. I mean, okay, sure. Okay, so let me back up. So the free market will adjust itself, not price them out. I apologize, libertarians. I don't believe that you can say that the free market will take care of itself, because at first something bad has to happen for the free market to realize there's something bad happening, and then it'll adjust itself, right? So like the free market, like if we're putting lead in paint, and how long is it going to take the free market to realize that lead in paint's a bad thing? Like, honestly, right? Because the good thing about government is that it can be forward leaning. It can be, this is just something I actually like, right? I think that does pretty well. The government can be forward leaning and saying, hey, we already have 100 cases of lead poisoning. Yo, cut it out. No more lead in paint. Or COVID. We see we see these COVID cases spiking. Yo, lean forward. Or even so, they could be something of, hey, we see a terrorist group over here. Lean forward. That's the good thing about government. That's actually a great thing about government, is that it can lean forward on issues, right? If you trust the people you have elected into office, you can lean forward on these people, and then they will lean forward on problems, right? So I'm not a big proponent of the free market, because even though yes, the free market sounds good and dandy, there are still evil people. There are still Genghis Khans and Matilda the Han and Imperial Japan. Like, they're still bad people, and they're going to exploit the system. And then we have to wait for the free market to fully realize that, hey, this is a bad idea, right? So again, we've kind of shifted, at least in America and probably the Western culture, where we say like, okay, we're going to lean forward on Department of Agriculture. Okay, hey, make sure you are cycling your land so you're not scorching the earth, right? So we're making land infertile, and they can't grow plants, right? Make sure you're doing this. Hey, make sure that if you're drilling oil or doing something, make sure you clean up after yourself, right? Like we come across these things like, right, the Gulf of Mexico. Here's all this oil. Instead of just leaving it there, hey, clean up your mess, right? And they're leaning forward these issues. So that is something that is good, right? That's something that is good when it comes to like regulation pieces. But when we start to get into socialism, now we're saying, hey, either democratically elected, right? So the whole DSA, Democratic Socialists of Americas, or we have the situation where someone just signs it into law that, hey, we're going to raise your taxes and we have universal health care. Well, universal health care is like, okay, hey, your taxes are going to go up, or maybe not, or maybe we cut back spending from the military, cut back spending from space travel, or cut back grants, whatever. And now you're going to need to come to us, right? So if you need to go to your doctor, you're going to go to your local health agency, and then you're going to have please, you can go through us. You don't have to pay nothing, which is great. You just come in, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. You come in, you don't have to pay for anything unless it's super expensive, like super expensive medicine. And then you're like, hey, I need a ultrasound. You go, okay, let me book you in the system. And let me look up in the system. Hey, we have a next available date either tomorrow or 6 months from now. If you look at Canada, they've had heroic stories of people getting cancer treatments, and because it's a free healthcare system, they've done great. And they got other people in Canada who say they can't even get an X-ray for 3 weeks, even though they have a broken hand or broken foot, right? There are those stories. Again, socialism is just, we're just saying that, hey, we're going to increase taxes or cut back federal spending, and the government's going to take care of this. That also comes with its own problems, because if you look at universal health care, let's take America for instance. America is what, 330 million people? Let me look it up real quick. 329 and a half, so 330 million. We can just call it that. And so 330 million people. And we have what? So 330 million people, and then we have the whole intelligence community. So that makes up a whole. Hold on, let me do this. Let me look something else up. Sorry, guys. Let me do it this way. Let's see, U.S. Government civilian number, civilian employee number. So right now, according to the Hill.com, there's 9.1 million workers in the federal government. So that's your USPS, your intelligence community, your law enforcement, and then all your different U.S. Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, Department of the Interior, Department of that, all your Department of State people, right? Okay, cool. A lot of it's going to be your USPS, by the way, but and then of course, and your military civilians as well. Okay, and then all your research functions of the government. Okay, so if we were to take, let's say, universal health care, we are relying on the government of 330 million people that has 9.1 current million workers, and then the 535 members of Congress, plus the president and all of his, or in the future her, staff and secretaries, and then all those people, and all those other leadership positions, plus everything under Department of Justice and the Supreme Court. Okay, why does this matter? We are relying on a country that right now says, at least right now, let's say politically, we don't care about universal health care because we have a strong military, right? And a lot of arguments is, well, look at Canada. Look at this place in Europe. They have universal health care. Yeah, but guess what? They also don't pay for the military, right? And so this is kind of where we can start having more honest conversations where we say, yeah, we could have universal health care if we were a country just kind of hidden away and wasn't a regional power. We downsize our military. Russia and China can just move on in. Do we want what happened to Ukraine to happen to us? Ask it. So the next time someone says, oh, look at Norway, look at Switzerland, look at Canada, they have universal health care, and yeah, we also pay for the military. We front a lot of the military. Just ask them this. You know what happened in Ukraine? Yeah? You want that to happen here? No? That's what happens if we take away our military. Okay. Off my high horse. We are entrusting them, right, because if they do not, because here's the thing. So not only, if the government, let's say the government takes healthcare, they need to hire all the doctors, right? So it's either they're going to like manage it from like a new Department of Health type of thing where they'll manage everything, and there'll still be private doctors and private clinics, but then the method of payment will just come from the government, right? That's one thing. That's one way you can do this, right? And that's still socialized. You're just saying you can still go to your private doctor, your private clinic, keep everything the same, but then the method of payment, instead of saying, hey, do you have your United Healthcare insurance card? Do you have your Blue Cross Blue Shield, your Aetna, your whatever your health insurance is, right? Instead of asking for that, or like, hey, are you going to pay for cash? You just go, hey, here's my social security number. They look you up and they go, okay, and they're going to bill the government. So that's one way to do it, right? Which could be or could not be effective. The only problem I can see with that is right now in 2022, there's an extended wait time to get your IRS tax refunds back. Not saying it's a bad thing, not blaming nothing, not pointing fingers at anyone. I'm just saying that, like, we have a problem getting tax returns back, and that's because there's not enough people to one, because of COVID. So you have employee shortages. That's one. COVID protocols in the government, which tells people to go home. You have that problem. You have all these other problems, right? And then on top of I'm sorry guys, I'm blanking out right now. So you have all these you have government COVID protocols, You have all that on top of just the massive amount of people doing tax returns this year, even though Biden gave a bigger budget to the IRS or requested it. So that's one way you can do it. Or the government just says, okay, we're going to manage the healthcare system overall, and we're going to hire the doctors, we're going to hire the nurses, we're going to man and staff the hospitals. Which at that point, the government is going to need to expand its employees, which means not only does it need to pay for the MRI machines and pay for the CAT scan machines, which are like $10 million piece of equipment. Not only are they going to need to pay for billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar hospitals. Not just one. We're talking about thousands, if not hundreds of thousands across the United States. They're going to be the ones fronting this cost. Oh, and by the way, now they're the one fronting the cost for the surgeons. Right, and I mean, but something else you got to worry about is right now we have a medical shortage right now, which is true. We have a medical staffing shortage, not because of COVID. This has happened way before COVID, and Trump is trying to fix this. We do not have enough doctors. I'm gonna say it again. We don't have enough doctors or nurses, period. So then you go ahead and throw COVID on top of that, and an increasing population because we have a semi-relaxed immigration policy right now. We have a strained medical system. So if they take it, we can start seeing some cracks, right? So that's kind of the things you got to think about when it comes to socialism, right? It can work, right? If we just say, hey, the government's a taxpayer, and the government says, hey, everyone's allotted $50,000 of medical bills, and then they do kind of price control, which usually doesn't work. They just look at rent control in New York. But let's say they try to do price control, or they set forth policies that make sure that medicine is cheap, or we say, hey, all medicine has to be made in the United States, or all medicine has to be done this way, or we only going to source things from here, right, to keep things as cheap as possible. Well, if you make medicine in the United States, it's going to be more expensive, but not really because you have more people working. Okay, never mind. Off that economics piece. There's ways, they say we're just going to front the bill. Everyone has $50,000, and after $50,000, you're off to your own devices. That's one way. That's one way to do it. And then communism is just outright China. Is outright, Soviet Russia, which, as long as you don't have a corrupt person in power, it works. It works just fine. Until there's a corrupt person in power. And that's the scary part, right? Communism is a utopia. It works. It works in dreams and fairy tales, until that one person who gets power hungry says, all right, I want the power. And now you're in trouble. Now you're screwed, right? So that's something that we need, that you got to be very, very mindful of. Okay, now that I kind of went through all three examples, why do I feel like we need to talk about this? Remember, pull out the thing I told you, put in your back pocket, about how the government is bailing out big companies, but they're public companies because they're listed as publicly traded companies. We call that corporate socialism. There's a thing called fiduciary duty, right, where companies are mandated by, not really mandated, but by law, they are heavily incentivized to make the shareholder or the stakeholder happy. Not stakeholder, shareholder happy. Because if they do something wrong, the shareholder can sue, right? Because once you go public and the share, and you're raising stocks for money or, liquidity, whatever reason why a company wants to sell stocks. Excuse me. They are going to run into a situation where they may, the board of directors and the C-suite, right? So being C-suite being what? The CEO, CFO, CTO, blah, blah, blah. And then the board of directors, they may own, like all of them collectively may only own 49% of the company. 40% of the company, 45% of the company. The founder might, and a founder slash owner might own the most at like maybe 10, 11, 15%. Right. And they say, hey, we're going to, hey, CEO, we're going to bring you in at, $1 million, let's say $500,000 salary. And over the course of 5 years, you'll have 9%, or like 6, 7, 8%, ownership in the company. Right. If they do something wrong and or bad, or a combination of the two, the shareholders, the people who buy stuff on Rebull and Robinhood, and then your BlackRocks, your Vanguards, and all of them, they can sue saying you hurt our bottom line. But guess what? That bottom line is also tied to 401ks and Roth IRAs, right? Because yes, BlackRock and Vanguard and all these big companies are buying up shares in these companies. Yes, that's true. But guess where they get the capital from? Like, you don't have people just like pulling billions of dollars out of their back pockets. No one's doing that. What is happening? Vanguard, BlackRock, iShares, or Voya, Stifle. There's so many companies, right? They're going out and they're saying, "Hey, we'll make you a deal with let's say Vanguard goes to a company and say, hey, we'll do your company's 401k." So they're relying on all these employees to put in 5, 10, 15, 20% of their freaking paychecks into the 401k. And so they have play money. But guess what? If these companies start doing bad and these people start liquidating their 401ks or pulling money out, guess who doesn't have money? Vanguard, blah, 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 blah. So this is where fiduciary duty comes into play, because the shareholders can sue the companies for messing up their bottom line. But not only are you going to hurt Vanguard, BlackRock, and these people, you're going to hurt the people who are putting the money into those companies, right? The police pensions, the firemen pensions, the teachers pensions, all these retirement accounts, 401ks, Roth IRAs, college, the 529 plan, I think it's called, a 529 college savings program, right? The TSPs for the military. So when we talk about the nuance of this government, yeah, we have capitalism. You know where capitalism actually lies? When you're talking to a leftist and you're like, oh, capitalism bad. Show me where the capitalism is. Because does Disney, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, Mitsubishi, Honda, Ford, GM, name your electrical company, do they have private ownership of their goods and services? And this is where the real meat and potatoes of this podcast is coming into play. So many people want to yell capitalism into blame. Capitalism bad, I hate capitalism, down with capitalism, blah, 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 blah. And what are their examples? When Delta Airlines gets bailed out. What is your examples? United Airlines gets bailed out during COVID. What is their examples? The Lehman Brothers in 2008. What are their examples? Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac. What are their examples? All the real estate banks, real estate companies and brokers and banks can bailed out in 2008. Show me the capitalism. Show me the private ownership of goods and services. Because guess what? When Jeff Bezos only had 11% of the company, he's not the owner. He doesn't own Amazon. I mean, yeah, he owns Amazon because he by himself may have the most shares. Like, by himself, he has a plurality, right? Him as Jeff Bezos as 11%. But guess what? He just can't go sell a company, right? Prime example, Elon Musk. He tweeted about taking Tesla private, and the SEC was ready to start an investigation and hem him up. He didn't own the company anymore. I mean, great, yeah, he owned it by plurality, but he does not have full ownership of those goods and services. He just directs it. He's a director who has a plurality of stock. That's what happens when we look at public companies. So when you hear a leftist or progressive or someone saying, look at capitalism, you go, no, that's not capitalism, right? It's just weird hodgepodge of public corporation. It's corporatism. That's the problem. It's corporatism. It's corporations who say, I'm going to hold plurality of this company, 9, 10, 15, 20%. I don't own it outright, which means I can't sell, right? Like if you take Elon Musk, like, he just can't dump all his shares of Tesla. Even though he owns them, he just can't dump them, because guess what? The SEC is going to come down his throat. Same thing with Jeff Bezos. You just all of a sudden liquidate billions, like your whole like 10% of a company. One, you got to register with the SEC. So like, once you buy 10% of a company, you got to register that with the SEC. That then becomes public knowledge. You got to let people know that you own 10%, and go ahead and just sell it all, and just on a whim. And I guarantee there's going to be some people in some suits at your office from the SEC saying, why'd you do that? Is there a money scam going here? Right. And again, that's where government's a good thing, because they can lean forward on those things. They can lean forward on the bad actors. But again, when we are talking about how these colleges are ripping kids off in tuition. Show me the capitalism, because I see that. I'm looking up right now. I'm gonna give you correct information. Hold on. Here we go. Where we got? Here we go. Let me look this up. Here we go. The GSL program, originally authorized in the Higher Education Act of 1965, empowered state and private nonprofit agencies to guarantee student loans to establish loan insurance for lenders who did not have access to state or private nonprofit agencies. The federal student loan programs kickstarted this, right, where the government is saying we're gonna work with the sector, the industry, and make sure these loans are backed so kids can go to school. And guess what universities did? Being bad actors, they just jacked up tuition. And they go like, okay, now we're going to over leverage ourselves, getting new football stadiums, new basketball courts. We want to build new buildings, build all this new stuff. Now we're over leveraged. Okay, too easy. Raise tuition by 4% next year. Raise it by another 5%. We're talking like year over year, 4 to 5% interest. Yo, put it like this: if they do year over year at 7% for 7 years, that doubles. It's the rule of sevens. So let's say I'm not sure if a university has done this, but let's say you take a university and for 7 years straight they do raise tuition by 7%, and 7 years is double. And now they can take it. Now they're not over leveraged, right? Because they're bringing enough. They have enough assets coming in, enough liquidity coming in to pay off the new football stadium, the new track, the new this, the new that, the new science building, right? All the new staff they're hiring, right? Bad actors. So again, show me the capitalist. Show me where the private ownership is, the private ownership of goods and services. Because I don't see it. I don't see it not one bit, right? Where real capitalism lies at is the taco guy on the side, is on the side of the street, right? I mean, granted, he needs to get a permit to sell food, got it good, whatever. But the guy selling hot dogs outside a baseball game, a guy selling tacos outside a baseball game, the shoe shiner and on the corner. Real capitalism is the people building e-commerce stores that are bringing in maybe $100,000 of revenue a year, a little bit more. Clothes is a little bit different. Clothes they don't have as many regulations as food does. Cause obviously, we're ingesting food and alcohol and tobacco. Are obviously like those industries are a little bit more regulated for good reasons. So like outside that, the shoe and the apparel industry isn't as heavily regulated. But that's where you find your true capitalism at. Paintings. Yeah, it's semi-regulated. A lot of money laundering going on there, and that needs to get better. I can't think of any other industries right now. But other than that, what I'm trying to get to is we both on the right and the left hate seeing corporatism. The left just calls it capitalism, carte blanche. They just put an umbrella over everything, and that's the problem. And that's the frustrating, and that's the very, 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 very frustrating part. They just go, capitalism. And you go, no, it was capitalism when they were private. When Nike was private, and their dude was selling shoes out the back of his car, that's capitalism. Not when they got Uyghur Muslims slaving away making shoes for you, and bowing down in China. Right? I don't want to make this podcast too long. It's already getting long enough as it is. The point I'm trying to get at, guys and gals, is we need to be better at language. When a leftist is coming out yelling about capitalism, agree with them on not the word capitalism. First say that's not capitalism. This corporatism. Let's separate these, right? Let's separate the language. Capitalism is if you wanted to make stickers or whatever, then hey, by golly, go make your stickers and sell them. Corporatism is what we both hate. We both hate seeing big companies get bailed out. But guess what? If they don't get bailed out, a whole bunch of people get fired and a whole bunch of people retirement accounts go away. And then, of course, the bad actors who may be insider trading in certain positions, they lose their positions as well. But outside that, you're going to have a whole bunch of people lose their jobs. and a whole bunch of people lose their retirement accounts. If a lot of these zombie companies that we have in America, look up zombie companies, by the way, you're gonna be flabbergasted. If a lot of these zombie companies went away, a lot of people's investment accounts are gonna go away. And that's the problem. So yes, there may be bad actors in different echelons of this country, but they are doing some good when they're saying like, let's not just destroy this economy, right? Because what's going to happen is let's say in 2008 or in 2020 or right now in 2022 going into 2023. I can't believe it's 2022. Can't believe 2022 is almost halfway over. Time needs to slow down. Like really, time really needs to slow down. Gosh, time needs to slow down, guys. But this next recession is going to come up. Yeah, it might be good for these zombie companies to go away, but that's a lot of people laid off. And a lot of people are going to lose their positions. And how do you tell America to deal with that? But guess what? Also going to happen? These companies going to start going bankrupt. What's going to happen? The S&P, the Nasdaq, and the Dow is all going to drop, right? Because you have these companies, these zombie companies, a part of these ETFs, they're getting part of the Nasdaq, the Dow, the S&P. They're part of them, right? And then so as these companies go bankrupt, it's going to reduce the value of that, and then the computer algorithm is going to put new companies in there. But in that meantime, when people are seeing this sell off, guess what they're going to do? They're going to sell off too, because not too many people know who all the zombie companies are. So if we just said, that's it, let all zombie companies die, there may be more companies out there that are zombies that we don't know about. And also they're going to start dying. People are going to be laid off, right? So people are going to be laid off. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to start liquidating their 401ks, their Roth IRAs, and everything out. They're going to take the tax hit just to survive. So you can take a person who has maybe $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 in a Roth IRA or a 401k. They're going to liquidate that. So not only is this company going bankrupt and the stock going to zero, going to shock the stock market and bring down the Nasdaq, the S&P, blah, blah, blah. People are going to see that, and the people who are in those companies who are being laid off and now need money, let's say they don't have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, now they're liquidating their 401k and the Roth IRA, right? Exiting out of these positions, which is going to put downward pressure on the stock market again. And now we have a sell-off. And before you know it, we have a 30% correction in the downside. And that's going to hurt everyone else who has a stable job or works for a stable company that's not a zombie. Guess what? They just took a hit to their retirement account. And what happens? We have a 50-year-old person said, I want to retire in 5 years. But because of this shock to the system, it's going to take 5 years just for them to get back to where they were at. Again, I don't want to get too nerdy. These are the things we need to be talking about. These are the things we need to talk about. When the leftist comes up to you and says, I hate the government, I hate capitalism, I want socialism, I want communism, to say, hey, socialism can work in some ways, right? We have some facets of socialism in America, right? I mean, outside a lot of the arguments is law enforcement and first responders. I mean, outside those things, the government does do certain things for us. The welfare state is literally socialism. It literally is. It's taking taxpayer money and then bond money, right? Not going to get to that. People, the Treasury selling bonds to raise money, but whatever, which is just future tax money, honestly. But here and there. We have welfare state, right? Food stamps. That is socialism. The welfare system is socialism, right? We have it, right? Question is can we be a regional power, have the military we need to protect ourselves when we have enemies like North Korea, Russia, China, Iran, and there's a whole lot more, plus all the VEOs. At the end of the day, Russia doesn't like us, China doesn't like us, North Korea or Iran don't like us, and then we have all Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Lebanese Hezbollah. We have all these other issues and people who don't like us. So if we were to reduce our military spending and reduce our space spending and we reduce our student loans and research grants and everything else we do, and all our foreign aid, right, to other countries, to like socialized medicine, can we even bring it to scale? Like, how many employees do we need to hire to be in a payment processing center for 330 million Americans? What does that look like? Right. So these are questions. If you find a leftist who's willing to talk and be like, hey, I get it. You don't like the military industrial complex. That's only what, 760 billion, 770, $780 billion a year. We still have what, a multi-trillion dollar deficit and spending budget. We send foreign aid. We do a lot of different things, right? So if we're going to downsize, can we scale? So that's one. Again, outside the socialism, we already do. So we kind of just had that conversation on top of, hey, this is what we can do under true capitalism, and everything we hate is under it's under this corporatism. And the last thing I'm leaving with is people who say they want communism. I'm like, that sounds great. What if you get a Donald Trump in there? Don't worry, I'll wait. Because these people who are communists, they believe they can erect a system that will produce communism, and then someone who has their ideology will get in power. Donald Trump shocked the system. He did not have the ideology of any politics. My question to you is, what happens if you get let's say you get someone in who's likable, but they do a bad job, and the system goes, no, we want someone better. We want someone who can do the damn thing. And they get voted in another Donald Trump. And now this person has the power of the communist state. You already said Donald Trump's greedy. So what happens if a Donald Trump gets what your version or vision of Donald Trump gets in the power of your communist state? All that money is sucked up to the top, just like Venezuela, just like China, just like Cambodia, just like everywhere. You get one corrupt person in there, and the money funnels up to the top. And then good luck getting that person out. Just look out Cambodia. That didn't work out too well for them, or Mao. All right, I'm going to leave it there. This is Intrinsic. This is Tyler with Intrinsicus signing off. Venting to a microphone. Hopefully, once I get a good enough camera and I can get my system set up, I'll have videos. Again, I want to be faceless, so it's going to be more of a ambient type thing where you'll see the mask, but you won't know who I am. Hopefully that's soon. But also, again, I'm in a hotel and it's kind of hard to make a whole studio. But look here, I'm going to sign off. This is long enough as it is. Again, this is Tyler Smith with Intrinsicus. Sign off. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe.